Dale Murphy adjusted his hunter orange vest and checked his rifle for the third time that morning. The pre-dawn air cut through his layers with typical late October chill in Idaho's Selway Bitterroot Wilderness. At 55, he'd been hunting these mountains for over 40 years, since his father first brought him as a teenager. The ritual of elk season was etched into his bones as deeply as the mountain landscape itself. "Weather's holding," he muttered to himself, glancing at the sky where stars were beginning to fade. His breath fogged before him as he shouldered his pack and secured his bolt-action Remington 308 across his back. The trailhead was empty this early, but Dale preferred it that way. He'd spent months scouting this area, identifying signs and trails where a sizable bull elk of dawn painted the eastern sky as he reached his planned spot, a small clearing that overlooked a meadow where elk occasionally grazed in the early morning. Dale settled in, his back against an ancient pine, rifle across his lap. The woods awakened around him, chickadees calling, a distant woodpecker's rat-a-tat-tat, the rustle of squirrels. He remained completely still, part of the landscape, another skill honed over decades. His mind wandered to previous hunts, to days when Carol would pack him thermoses of coffee and homemade jerky, to Mark's first successful shot at 14. Good memories. 3 hours passed. The sun climbed higher, warming the morning air. Dale shifted position carefully, stretching his stiffening legs. That's when he heard it, the distinctive sound of branches breaking under heavy hooves. He froze, ears straining. There it was again, coming from the north side of the meadow. Dale raised his binoculars slowly. The bull elk emerged cautiously from the tree line, magnificent and alert. Dale estimated 6 points on each antler, a mature bull in his prime. The animal paused, testing the air, ears swiveling. Dale remained motionless, calculating distance and wind direction. About 200 yards, a reasonable shot for his experienced hand. He waited patiently as the elk moved further into the clearing, presenting a better angle. With practiced precision, Dale set down his binoculars and raised his rifle. The familiar weight settled against his shoulder as he peered through the scope, controlling his breathing. The elk turned slightly, offering a perfect shot at the vital area behind the shoulder. Dale exhaled halfway and squeezed the trigger. The shot echoed across the meadow. The elk leaped forward, ran a few staggering steps, then collapsed. Dale watched through his scope, making sure the animal wasn't getting up again. After several minutes of stillness, he nodded to himself with satisfaction. A clean kill. He gathered his gear and made his way down to the meadow, mapping the most direct route to the fallen elk. "Beautiful animal," Dale murmured as he approached the magnificent bull. He estimated it weighed close to 700 pounds. He'd need to quarter it to pack it out. A familiar sense of reverence mixed with satisfaction filled him. He'd taken only what he needed over the years, utilizing every part possible, respecting the animals that provided for him. This elk would stock his freezer through winter and spring. Dale set his pack down and pulled out his field dressing kit. He removed his jacket, replacing it with a designated gutting apron to protect his clothes from the mess ahead. The morning had warmed enough that he was comfortable in his flannel shirt. He knelt beside the elk and drew his knife, beginning the careful process of field dressing the animal. Time passed as Dale worked methodically, removing the animal's entrails to cool the meat quickly. The smell of blood and organs filled the air as he worked. Sweat beaded on his forehead despite the cool temperature. So focused was he on his task that the first warning signs didn't register immediately. The forest had gone silent. When Dale finally noticed the unnatural quiet, a trickle of unease traveled up his spine. He paused, knife in hand, and scanned the tree line. Nothing moved. No birds called. The stillness felt heavy, pregnant with something his instincts recognized before his conscious mind could name it. That's when he caught the scent, musky and wild, unmistakable to anyone who'd spent time in grizzly country. Dale slowly reached for his rifle, which he'd propped against a nearby log. His heart rate accelerated, mouth suddenly dry. He'd had encounters with black bears before, but grizzlies were different, more unpredictable, more dangerous. The low, huffing grunt came from his left, behind a screen of alder brush. Dale saw movement, brown fur visible through the vegetation, and then the massive head emerged. The grizzly was enormous, at least 800 pounds, with the distinctive shoulder, hump and dish-shaped face that distinguished it from black bears. The animal rose slightly on its hind legs, testing the air, catching the rich scent of blood and meat. Dale's hand closed around his rifle. In one fluid motion, he brought it to his shoulder, but hesitated on the trigger. Shooting a grizzly was illegal unless in self-defense, and despite the danger, the bear hadn't charged yet. Dale knew from wilderness training that backing away slowly was the proper response. "Hey, bear!" he called out firmly, not yelling but making his presence known as he started to move backward. "I'm going to leave this for you, bear." The grizzly dropped to all fours and swung its massive head toward Dale's voice, its small eyes fixed on him with an intelligence that sent another chill down Dale's spine. The bear took one lumbering step forward, then another. "Hey, bear!" Dale called more, loudly this time. "Back off!" The grizzly paused, seeming to consider this large, strange creature making noise. Dale continued his slow retreat, rifle ready but not wanting to fire. 20 feet separated them now. 15. The bear huffed again, a spray of condensation, visible in the cool air. For a moment, Dale thought the standoff might end peacefully. The grizzly seemed more interested in the elk carcass than in him, but then the wind shifted slightly, carrying Dale's human scent more directly to the bear's sensitive nose. The change was immediate and terrifying. The bear's demeanor transformed, from curious to aggressive in an instant. Its ears flattened against its massive skull, lips pulled back to reveal yellowed canines. A deep, rumbling growl emanated from its chest. Dale knew what was coming next. He raised his rifle and fired, a warning shot into the air, hoping the sound would scare the bear away. The report echoed through the mountains, but instead of retreating, the noise seemed to trigger the grizzly's charge. 700 pounds of muscle, claw, and fury exploded toward Dale with shocking speed. He had time for one hasty shot that he couldn't tell if it connected before dropping his rifle and diving to the side. Too late. The bear's massive paw caught him across the back, sending him sprawling face first into the dirt. The impact knocked the wind from his lungs. Dale rolled, desperate to get to his feet, but the bear was on him. Hot, fetid breath enveloped him as massive jaws clamped onto his left shoulder. Pain exploded through Dale's body, unlike anything he'd experienced. He could feel teeth crushing through muscle, grinding against bone, so a scream tore from his throat, primal and raw. Through waves of agony, Dale's survival instincts kicked in. He'd read accounts of bear attacks, knew that fighting back against a grizzly only intensified the assault. With excruciating effort, he forced himself to go limp, playing dead as the bear shook him like a rag doll. The grizzly released his shoulder only to clamp down on his thigh. Fresh pain radiated through Dale's body. He bit his lip to keep from screaming again, tasting blood as his teeth cut into flesh. Darkness edged his vision. The bear's claws raked across his back, shredding his shirt and skin with equal ease. Then came the most terrifying moment, jaws closing around his head. Dale felt the bear's teeth scrape against his skull, felt skin tear away. Warm blood flowed down his face, into his eyes. "This is how I die," he thought with strange clarity. The pressure increased, and Dale waited for the final crush that would end everything. But it didn't come. Instead, the grizzly suddenly released him and stepped back. Through blood-blurred vision, Dale saw the bear stand on its hind legs again, swinging its head from side to side, as if looking for other threats. Then it dropped down, gave one last huff in Dale's direction, and lumbered toward the elk carcass. Dale remained motionless, afraid the slightest movement would renew the attack. His entire body throbbed with pain. Blood pooled beneath him. He could feel cold seeping into his bones, shock setting in. Still, he didn't move, even as he heard the sounds of the bear tearing into the elk just yards away. Minutes stretched like hours as Dale lay there, consciousness wavering. The bear fed noisily, bones cracking under powerful jaws. Dale knew he needed to assess his injuries, needed to get help, but moving seemed impossible. Finally, after what seemed an eternity, the sounds of feeding stopped. Through barely open eyelids, Dale watched the grizzly raise its blood-smeared muzzle, scanning the area once more. It seemed satisfied there was no further threat. With surprising grace for such a massive creature, the bear turned and padded away, disappearing into the forest as silently as it had appeared. Only then did Dale allow himself a shallow, painful breath. The forest remained silent for several minutes after the bear's departure. Dale's mind struggled through waves of pain to form coherent thoughts. He needed to inventory his injuries. needed to get help. With agonizing slowness, he attempted to move. His left arm responded poorly, likely due to the shoulder wound. His right seemed functional. Using it, he pushed himself up to a sitting position, nearly blacking out from the effort. Blood dripped steadily from his head wound, running into his eyes. He wiped it away with his good hand, feeling a large flap of scalp hanging loose. "Jesus," Dale whispered, nausea washing over him. He forced himself to breathe slowly. Panic would only make things worse. His left thigh had deep puncture wounds from the bear's teeth, but amazingly, he could still move his leg. His back felt like it was on fire where the claws had raked him, but he was alive. Nothing seemed immediately life-threatening if he could stop the bleeding. Dale's pack lay nearby where he'd left it before field dressing the elk. With excruciating effort, he dragged himself toward it. Each movement sent fresh waves of pain through his body. When he finally reached it, his hands trembled so badly he could barely open the zipper. Inside was a basic first aid kit, nowhere near adequate for his injuries, but better than nothing. Dale pulled out gauze pads and pressed them against his scalp wound, wincing at the pressure. He tore open packets of quick clot with his teeth, applying the clotting agent to the worst of his wounds. The chemical burned against raw flesh, drawing a hiss from between clenched teeth. His satellite phone was in an outer pocket of the pack. Dale fumbled for it, nearly sobbing with relief, when he saw it was undamaged. His blood-slick fingers pressed the emergency button. The screen flashed, confirming the distress signal was transmitting his GPS coordinates. "Help coming," he told himself, voice raspy. "Just hold on." Dale knew rescue wouldn't be immediate. Even with a helicopter, it would take time to reach his remote location. He needed to prevent shock and keep pressure on his wounds. From another pocket, he retrieved a space blanket, the thin mylar crinkling as he awkwardly wrapped it around himself one-handed. The pain was becoming more difficult to compartmentalize as adrenaline ebbed. Dale fished out some ibuprofen from his kit, swallowing the pills dry. They would hardly touch the agony, but it was all he had. His medical training from years in the Forest Service before retirement ran through his mind. Elevate injured limbs, maintain body heat, apply pressure. To bleeding wounds, time blurred. Dale drifted in and out of consciousness, jerking awake each time with fresh waves of pain. The sun had moved across the sky, shadows lengthening. He'd been lying there for hours. Twice he checked the satellite phone, confirming the emergency. Signal was still active. Each time he forced himself to take small sips from his water bottle, knowing dehydration would only worsen his condition. The sound of helicopter rotors came so gradually that Dale thought he was hallucinating at first. But the noise grew louder, unmistakable. With his good arm, he weakly waved the space blanket, hoping its reflective surface would catch the sun. The helicopter circled once, twice, then hovered over the small clearing. 2 rescue technicians rappelled down while the helicopter maintained position. They reached Dale quickly, their expressions grave as they assessed his condition. "Grizzly," Dale managed to say as they knelt beside him. "We figured," the female paramedic replied, already checking his vital signs. "You've lost a lot of blood, sir. We're going to stabilize you for transport." The male paramedic radioed information to the helicopter while his partner started an IV line. The cool rush of fluids entering Dale's vein was oddly comforting. They worked efficiently, applying proper dressings to his wounds, securing his damaged shoulder with a field splint, and strapping him to a rescue basket. "St. Patrick's in Missoula has a trauma unit standing by," the female paramedic told him as they prepared to lift him. "You're going to be okay." Dale wasn't so sure, but he nodded weakly. The pain medication they'd administered was beginning to take effect, dulling the worst edges of his agony. As they secured him to the rescue line and signaled the helicopter, Dale caught one last glimpse of the meadow, where his elk still lay partially consumed. The rifle he'd owned for 20 years lay abandoned nearby. None of it mattered now. The ascent to the helicopter was mercifully quick. Inside, a flight medic continued treatment as they banked and headed east toward Missoula. Dale closed his eyes, surrendering to the medication and exhaustion. His next awareness was of bright lights and urgent voices. The hospital emergency room swirled around him, doctors barking orders, nurses moving with practiced efficiency. Someone cut away what remained of his clothing. More IV lines were established. A mask delivered oxygen to his face. "Mr. Murphy?" A doctor's face appeared above him. I'm Dr. Chen. You've sustained serious injuries from a bear attack. We're taking you to surgery right away to repair damage to your shoulder and scalp. Do you understand?" Dale managed a slight nod, which sent fresh pain through his head. "Good. We're going to take good care of you. I need you to count backward. From 10 for me." The anesthesia took hold before Dale reached 7. He awoke in stages, consciousness returning in fragments. First came awareness of pain, duller now but still present beneath a blanket of medication. Then sounds. The steady beep of monitors, hushed voices, the squeak of rubber-soled shoes on linoleum. Finally, Dale opened his eyes to a dimly lit hospital room. Night had fallen. A nurse noticed his movement and approached the bed. "Welcome. Back, Mr. Murphy," she said, checking his monitors. "How's your pain level on a scale of 1 to 10? Dale had to swallow twice before he could speak. 6, he rasped. She nodded, adjusting something on his IV drip. "The doctor will be in to see you soon. You've been in and out for about 12 hours. Dale nodded slightly, careful not to move his head too much. His entire body felt weighted. Down. He raised his right hand slightly, saw it was connected to tubes and monitors. His left arm was immobilized against his chest. Dr. Chen arrived a few minutes later, clipboard in hand. She was younger than Dale had expected, maybe early. 40s with kind eyes above her surgical mask. "Mr. Murphy, good to see you awake. The surgery went well, but you've sustained serious injuries. Your left shoulder has significant tissue damage and multiple fractures to the clavicle and scapula. We've repaired what we could surgically, but you'll need extensive physical therapy." She paused, letting that sink in before continuing. "The scalp laceration was severe. You lost approximately a 4-inch section of scalp that couldn't be salvaged. We've cleaned and dressed the wound, but you'll likely need skin grafts and possibly additional reconstructive surgeries." Dale closed his eyes briefly, absorbing this. "My leg?" he asked. "Puncture wounds to the left thigh, but fortunately no. Major arterial damage. We've cleaned and repaired those as well. The back lacerations required numerous stitches but should heal with minimal complications." The doctor set down her clipboard and moved closer to the bed. "Mr. Murphy, you're very lucky to be alive. Bear attack survivors with injuries this extensive are uncommon." "Don't feel lucky," Dale murmured. A ghost of a smile crossed her face. "I understand. We're going to keep you here for at least a week to monitor for infection and start initial physical therapy. Do you have family we should contact?" Dale thought of his son in Seattle. "My son Mark. His number's in my phone if you found it. I'll have the nurse check with your personal effects. Rest now, we'll talk more tomorrow." After she left, Dale stared at the ceiling, pain throbbing beneath the medication. The events in the meadow played on loop in his mind. The elk, the silence, the bear's sudden appearance. What could he have done differently? Should he have fired earlier? Would it have mattered? Sleep claimed him eventually, but it was restless, filled with dreams of teeth and claws and hot, fetid breath. Morning brought a new shift of nurses, more medications, and painful dressing changes. A hospital social worker visited, helping Dale contact Mark. The conversation was difficult, his son's voice tight with concern and guilt at being so far away. "I can fly out tomorrow, Dad," Mark insisted. "No need," Dale replied, stubborn even. Through the pain. "They say I'll be here at least a week. Come then, help me get home." Mark reluctantly agreed, promising to call daily for updates. By afternoon, 2 officers from Idaho Fish and Game arrived. They introduced themselves as conservation officers Jenkins and Rodriguez. Jenkins was older, with a salt and pepper beard and the weathered look of someone who spent most days outdoors. Rodriguez was younger, maybe early 30s, tall and lean. "Mr. Murphy," Jenkins began after brief introductions, "we need to get your statement about the bear attack when you're up to it." Dale nodded slightly, careful of his heavily bandaged head. "Now's fine." Rodriguez pulled out a recorder, placing it on the bedside table after getting Dale's permission. Jenkins took a small notebook from his pocket. "Start from the beginning," Rodriguez suggested. "What time did you arrive at the trailhead?" Dale recounted the events methodically. His early morning hike-in, the successful elk hunt, field dressing the animal. His voice faltered slightly when he reached the moment when the forest went silent. "The bear came from downwind," he explained. "I didn't notice until it was too late. My fault." Jenkins shook his head. "Grizzlies are stealthy for their size. What happened next?" Dale described the bear's initial approach, his warning shot, and the sudden charge. Reliving the attack made his heart rate increase, visible on the monitor beside his bed. A nurse looked in, concerned, but Dale waved her away. "I played dead," he continued, "like they tell you to do with grizzlies. Thought I was done for when it got my head in its mouth." Both officers winced at that detail. Rodriguez asked, "Any idea why it stopped the attack?" Dale shook his head slightly. "Maybe satisfied I wasn't a threat, went for the elk instead." "Smart move not fighting back," Jenkins commented. "Fighting just triggers more aggression with grizzlies." The questioning continued for another 20 minutes, with Dale describing the bear in as much detail as he could remember. Size, coloration, any distinguishing marks. The officers seemed particularly interested in whether the bear had cubs, or if Dale had noticed any unusual behavior before the attack. "Just normal grizzly behavior," Dale told them. "Protecting a food source, maybe its territory. Nothing seemed off about it." Jenkins nodded, making notes. "We've had increased bear activity in that area this season. Less natural food available due to the summer drought. They're coming lower, staying active longer before denning." "Will you try to find this bear?" Dale asked. The officers exchanged glances. "We'll investigate the site," Rodriguez said carefully. "But if the bear was just exhibiting normal defensive behavior over a food source, there's no protocol for removal." Dale understood what they weren't saying directly. Unless the bear showed predatory behavior toward humans or was frequenting populated areas, wildlife management policy was to leave it alone. He found he didn't disagree. The grizzly had been doing what grizzlies do. "One more question, Mr. Murphy," Jenkins said. "Your rifle, did you fire at the bear directly at any point?" Dale thought back to the chaotic moments before the attack. "I fired a warning shot in the air, then one more as it charged. Don't know if I hit it, probably not." Jenkins made a final note. "Thank you for your time. We'll check the site. If we recover your firearm and gear, we'll make sure it gets back to you." As they prepared to leave, Dale called out, "The elk, it's still there?" Rodriguez nodded. Likely not much left by now between the grizzly and scavengers. Nature's way. After they left, Dale stared out the window at the mountains visible in the distance. Somewhere out there, the bear that had nearly killed him was going about its business, perhaps still feeding on his elk. The thought should have angered him, but instead he felt a strange sense of acceptance. They had both been following ancient patterns, the hunter and the apex predator. The next few days passed in a blur of pain management, physical therapy assessments, and visits from various specialists. The plastic surgeon explained the future procedures Dale would need for his scalp wound and showed him the current state of the injury using a hand mirror. Dale barely recognized himself. His head was partially shaved around a large wound where skin was simply gone, exposing the reddened surface of his skull. The edges were neatly stitched, but the missing section was covered only by medicated dressings. His left eye was still swollen, cheek bruised purple and yellow. "We'll start with skin grafts in about 2 weeks," the surgeon explained. "Once we're certain there's no infection and the wound bed is optimal. You'll likely need a couple of procedures and there will be noticeable scarring. Hair won't regrow in the grafted areas." Dale set down the mirror. "Will I need to wear a hat for the rest of my life?" The surgeon smiled slightly. "Many men your age do anyway, but yes, sun protection will be important. The grafted skin will be more sensitive." A physical therapist came next, explaining the long road ahead for his shoulder. "The bear's teeth caused significant muscle damage," she told him while demonstrating passive movement exercises. "We're going to start very gently. Your job now is to prevent stiffness while the tissues heal." By the 5th day, Dale was able to walk short distances with assistance. The wounds on his back pulled with each movement, stitches tugging at sensitive flesh. His left leg ached where the punctures were healing, but it was his shoulder and head that concerned the medical team most. Both remained at high risk for infection. On the 6th day, a local reporter somehow got past hospital security and into Dale's room. He introduced himself as Tyler from the Missoula Current before a nurse could intervene. "Mr. Murphy, can I get a statement about your grizzly encounter? People are calling you the luckiest man in Montana." Dale frowned. "Idaho? It happened in Idaho." The nurse was already on the phone calling security. Tyler pressed on. "How does it feel to have survived one of nature's most fearsome predators?" "Painful," Dale replied flatly. "And private." Security arrived quickly, escorting the persistent reporter out. The nurse apologized profusely, but Dale waved it away. "Not your fault. Vultures come in all species. That evening, Dr. Chen informed him that several more reporters had been asking for interviews. We've denied them all, of course. Patient privacy is sacred here. But you should know your story has generated some local interest. Dale sighed. Slow news week, I guess. Bear attacks make good copy, Dr. Chen replied with a slight shrug. The Fish and Game officers called. They recovered your rifle and some personal effects. They're holding them until you're released. And the bear? No sign, but they confirmed from tracks that it was indeed a large male grizzly, likely over 700 pounds. Dale nodded. That matched his own estimate. The doctor continued reviewing his chart, making adjustments to his medications and treatment plan. Your son arrives tomorrow? That's the plan. He'll help get me home once I'm discharged. Good. We'll aim for discharge in another 3 days if infection doesn't develop. You'll need assistance at home for several weeks. Is that something your son can help with? Dale hadn't thought that far ahead. Mark had a job, responsibilities in Seattle. I'll figure something out. Maybe a home health aide. Dr. Chen nodded, making notes. We'll have our social services department discuss options with you. That night, alone in his hospital room, Dale faced the reality of his situation more clearly than he had since the attack. His injuries would require months of recovery and multiple surgeries. His left shoulder might never regain full function. The missing section of scalp was a permanent loss. And beyond the physical damage, Dale recognized something else changing. Within him, his relationship to the wilderness he'd loved his entire life. For the first time, he wondered if he would ever hunt again. The thought of returning to those remote mountains stirred a new and unfamiliar emotion: fear. Mark arrived the next morning, his face a mask of shock poorly concealed when he first saw his father's condition. He recovered quickly, clasping Dale's good hand. Jesus, Dad, when you said bear attack, I didn't. It's worse than it looks, Dale joked weakly. Mark's eyes were suspiciously bright. Don't make jokes. I thought I was going to lose you too. The unspoken presence of Carol, 5 years gone, hung between them. Dale squeezed his son's hand. I'm still here. Takes more than a grizzly to get rid of me. Mark stayed through the day, speaking with doctors and making notes about Dale's care requirements. He contacted his employer in Seattle, arranging for extended remote work. I can stay at the cabin for a month, he told Dale. Help you get back on your feet. Dale started to protest, but stopped himself. He was going to need help, and his stubborn pride had already nearly gotten him killed once. Appreciate it, he said instead. 3 days later, Dale was discharged with a long list of medications, wound care instructions, and follow-up appointments scheduled. Mark brought clothes, loose button-up shirts that could fit over Dale's, bandaged shoulder, and stretchy athletic pants that wouldn't press against the healing puncture wounds on his thigh. The drive from Missoula to Dale's cabin outside Lowell, Idaho, took nearly 3 hours. Every bump in the road sent pain shooting through Dale's body, despite the medication. He dozed intermittently, waking disoriented each time. Almost there. Dad, Mark said as they turned onto the familiar gravel road leading to the cabin. The late October landscape was transitioning to early winter, trees mostly bare, frost coating the meadows in early morning. The cabin looked exactly as Dale had left it a week ago, a lifetime ago. The sturdy log structure sat on a small clearing, backed by pine forest, with a view of the mountains from the front porch. A woodshed stood nearby, well stocked for winter. Dale's old Ford F-150 was parked in its usual spot. Mark helped him inside, settling him in the recliner that had been Carol's, favorite before her illness. The cabin was chilly, and Mark immediately set about starting a fire in the Riverstone fireplace that dominated one wall of the main room. Home sweet home, Dale murmured, looking around at the familiar space. Mounted deer and elk heads watched from the walls. Photographs of hunting trips and family moments lined the mantel. A glass case in one corner displayed Dale's collection of hand-tied fishing flies. Everything exactly as it should be, except Dale himself. The next days established a new routine. Mark helped change Dale's dressings each morning, a process that remained painful despite medication. Physical therapy exercises followed, gentle movements to maintain what function remained in Dale's shoulder while the deeper tissues healed. Meals, medications, rest, brief walks on the porch when weather permitted. Mark worked on his laptop. During the day, some software engineering project Dale couldn't begin to understand. In the evenings, they watched old westerns on Dale's modest television or played chess, one of the few shared activities they'd always enjoyed together. A week into this new normal, Officer Jenkins from Fish and Game stopped by, bringing Dale's recovered rifle and backpack. The pack had been partially shredded, likely by the bear searching for food after Dale was evacuated. "Rifle seems undamaged," Jenkins said, placing it in the gun cabinet. "We found it about 20 yards from where the attack occurred." Dale nodded from his recliner. "Dropped it when the bear hit me, didn't have time for an aimed shot." Jenkins settled into a chair, accepting the coffee Mark offered. "We completed our investigation. No signs the bear was wounded. Tracks indicate it's a mature male grizzly, territory overlapping with several others in the region." "What happens to now?" Mark asked. Jenkins shrugged. "Nothing. Bear was defending a food source, the elk carcass. Natural behavior. We've posted additional warnings at trailheads in the area, but this time of year backcountry traffic is minimal anyway." Dale wasn't surprised. Human interests and wildlife management often existed in uneasy balance in this part of the country. "The bear was just being a bear. Found something else you might want," Jenkins added, reaching into his pocket. He pulled out Dale's hunting license, protected in its plastic holder but stained with blood. "Thought you might want this back. For the record book, at least. That was a fine bull elk." Dale took the license with his good hand, looking at the blood-smeared document. "For all the good it did me." Jenkins stood to leave. "Most hunters go a lifetime without seeing a grizzly up close. You've got the scars to prove otherwise. There's a certain honor in that, way I see it." After the officer left, Dale remained quiet, turning the blood-stained license over in his hand. Honor wasn't the word he'd have chosen. That night, Dale had the first vivid nightmare. The bear's hot breath on his face, teeth closing around his skull, the certainty of death. He woke gasping, shoulder throbbing where he'd tensed in his sleep. Mark appeared in the doorway, concern etched on his face. "Dad, you okay?" Dale nodded, embarrassed. "Bad dream. Go back to sleep." But sleep evaded him for the rest of the night. Instead, he stared at the ceiling, re-examining each moment of the attack, wondering what he could have done differently. Should he have been more vigilant? Carried bear spray? Left the elk and backed away sooner? The questions circled without resolution. 2 weeks after returning home, Dale had his first follow-up appointment with the plastic surgeon who'd traveled to the small hospital in Grangeville to see him. The doctor removed the dressings from Dale's scalp, examining the wound with clinical detachment. "Healing nicely," he pronounced. "No signs of infection. We can proceed with the first skin graft next week." Dale nodded, avoiding looking at his reflection in the examination room mirror. Mark asked the questions Dale couldn't bring himself to voice, about the procedure, the recovery, the expected outcomes. "We'll take skin from the thigh," the surgeon explained. "The graft site will be painful initially, but that area heals relatively quickly. The recipient site, the scalp, will require careful monitoring. You'll need to keep it completely clean and protected." Dale listened silently. Another surgery, more pain, more recovery. The path stretched before him, seemingly endless. After the appointment, Mark drove them to the local diner in Grangeville. It was the first time Dale had been in public since the attack, and he was acutely conscious of his appearance. The bandages on his head were visible despite the cap he wore. His left arm remained in a sling, surgical sites on his back pulled with every movement. The diner fell momentarily quiet when they entered, conversations pausing as heads turned. Dale recognized several faces, local, ranchers, business owners, fellow hunters. News traveled fast in small communities. Edna, the 60-something waitress who'd known Dale for decades, approached their booth. "Well, if it isn't the man of the hour? Heard you went toe-to-toe with a grizz and lived to tell about it." Dale managed a thin smile. "Not sure I'd recommend it. Coffee's on the house," she declared, pouring 2 cups without asking. "What else can I get you boys?" They ordered, and gradually the initial stares subsided. But twice during their meal, people stopped by their booth. First Jim Barton, who owned the hardware store, then Doug Reeves, a fellow member of the local hunting club. "Heard it was a monster," Jim commented. 8-footer, some said. "Papers said 900 pounds, Doug added. "That true, Dale?" Dale shook his head. "Not quite that big, but big enough." Both men seemed disappointed by his understated response. They wanted drama, Dale realized. Blood and heroics and narrow escape. The tedious reality of pain and recovery held less appeal. "There's an article about you in Field and Stream," Doug mentioned before leaving. Called you the man who stared down death. Pretty impressive. Dale hadn't known about the article, didn't want to know. The actual encounter had contained no glory, no courage, just terror and pain and blind luck. After lunch, Mark drove them by the post office, where Dale's box contained 2 weeks of accumulated mail. Among the bills and flyers were several cards from distant acquaintances who'd heard about the attack. One letter stood out. Formal letterhead from an outdoor network television producer. They want to interview you, Mark said, scanning the contents. For a show called Wilderness Survivors. They're offering a generous appearance fee. Dale took the letter and crumpled it. Not interested. Mark didn't argue. They collected the rest of the mail and headed home. That evening, Dale sat on the porch despite the chill, watching the mountains darken as the sun set. His taxidermy workshop stood silent nearby, projects abandoned since the attack. He wondered if his hands would ever be steady enough again for the delicate work of mounting and preserving. Should turn in, Mark said, appearing at the door. Big day tomorrow with the skin graft. Dale nodded but didn't move. You ever wonder why we do it, Mark? Hunting? His son settled into the chair beside him. You always said it was about connection, being part of the natural cycle. Yeah. Dale watched the first stars appear above the mountain peaks. But nature doesn't need us participating. Carries on. Just fine without humans involved. Mark was quiet for a moment. This isn't about hunting, is it? It's about what happened to you. Dale sighed. That bear was just being a bear. Defending a food source, maybe its territory. I was the intruder when you think about it. Dad, no, hear me out. 40 years I've been hunting these mountains. Thought I understood them, respected them. But I was playing at it, Mark. Playing at being part of something wild while having all my modern advantages. Mark didn't immediately respond, sensing Dale needed to talk this through. That grizzly, Dale continued. When it had my head in its jaws, I knew exactly what I was. Food. No different than that elk. All my experience, my skills, my fancy. Gear, none of it mattered. But you survived, Mark pointed out. Dale touched his bandaged head gently. By blind luck, Bear decided I wasn't worth the trouble, chose the easier meal. He gazed at the darkening trees that bordered his property. It's still out there, you know, going about its bear business. Probably denning up for winter soon. Does that bother you, that they didn't try to catch it? Dale considered the question. No, wouldn't be right. It was just being what it is. They sat in silence as night fully claimed the landscape. Finally, Dale continued, not sure I can hunt again, not sure I want to. Mark reached over, clasping his father's good shoulder. You don't have to decide anything now, Dad. Just focus on healing. The skin graft procedure the next day was painful but successful. Dale returned home with fresh bandages and new medications. The donor site on his thigh added to his collection of pains, but the surgeon was optimistic about the graft taking properly. As November deepened toward Thanksgiving, Dale's physical recovery progressed slowly but steadily. The puncture wounds on his leg healed completely. The claw marks on his back faded to pink lines that would eventually become white scars. Physical therapy for his shoulder showed incremental improvements, though the orthopedist warned he might never regain full range of motion. The skin graft on his scalp healed well enough that a second, smaller graft was scheduled to complete. The coverage. Dale refused to look in mirrors, wearing caps constantly, avoiding his reflection in windows and glass surfaces. Mark extended his stay, working remotely through November. Dale knew his son couldn't remain indefinitely, but the thought of being alone in the cabin stirred an unfamiliar anxiety. The nightmares continued, less frequent but no less vivid. Word of Dale's encounter spread beyond local circles. The Idaho Statesman ran a feature article. A hunting podcast requested an interview, which Dale declined. 3 more television shows sent inquiries. Dale ignored them all. The only offer that gave him pause came from the Idaho Department of Fish and Game. They asked if he would consider sharing his experience as part of their bear safety education program. Dale promised to think about it, recognizing the potential value in warning others. Thanksgiving arrived with snow dusting the mountains. Mark prepared a modest dinner, and they ate quietly, both aware of Carol's absence and the changed circumstances since the previous year. Dale managed small portions, his appetite still affected by medications and lingering trauma. Seattle's expecting me back next week, Mark said as they cleaned up afterward. Boss has been understanding, but I've got project deadlines coming up. Dale nodded, hiding his apprehension. I'll be fine, getting better every day. I've arranged for a home health nurse to check on you 3 times a week. And Mrs. Davenport from church said she'd bring meals by. Don't need babysitting, Dale protested, but without much conviction. Mark ignored the comment. Physical therapist will come Tuesdays and Thursdays, and I'll be back for your next surgery in December. Dale nodded again, knowing he should be grateful but feeling smothered all the same. His independence had always been cornerstone to his identity. Now he needed help for the simplest tasks. That night, Dale sat alone by the fireplace after Mark went to bed. The mounted heads on the walls seemed to watch him with glass eyes, trophies from decades of hunting. Elk, deer, moose, black bear. He'd always felt a sense of pride looking at them. Now they seemed like reminders of his hubris. His gaze settled on the black bear mount above the mantel, smaller than the grizzly. That had attacked him, with a different facial structure and no shoulder hump. He'd taken it legally, cleanly, years ago, had felt the proper hunter's respect for the animal, but he hadn't truly understood until now. Mark departed 3 days later, leaving Dale with detailed instructions, medication schedules, and enough casseroles in the freezer to last weeks. The cabin felt immediately emptier, quieter. Dale settled into a new routine. Mornings began with painful but necessary physical therapy exercises. The home health nurse, Sandra, visited Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, changing dressings and monitoring his healing. On Tuesdays and Thursdays, he drove himself carefully to Grangeville for professional physical therapy sessions. When alone, Dale often found himself standing at the window, watching the tree line. Winter settled fully over the landscape. Snow blanketing the ground, temperatures dropping well below freezing at night. Somewhere in the mountains, the grizzly that had mauled him would be hibernating in a den, sleeping away the winter months, waiting for spring. After one physical therapy session in town, Dale found himself driving past the single-story building that housed the regional fish and game office. On impulse, he pulled into the parking lot. Officer Jenkins looked surprised when Dale appeared in his doorway. "Mr. Murphy, didn't expect to see you. Come in." Dale settled carefully into a chair, still moving gingerly to accommodate his healing wounds. "Been thinking about your bear safety program." Jenkins leaned forward. "You considering our request?" "Maybe." Dale glanced around the modest office, noting the wildlife posters and safety brochures. What exactly would it involve? Nothing. Too demanding. We do workshops before each hunting season, presentations at sportsmen's shows. Your perspective would be valuable, a real survivor's account. Dale considered this. Not interested in being a sideshow attraction. Jenkins nodded. Understanding. That's not what we're after. Education, pure and simple. Bear encounters are increasing as development pushes into wildlife habitat. Hunters need to know how to avoid conflicts and what to do if one occurs. Like playing dead saved my life, Dale acknowledged. Exactly. That's a crucial point most people only read about. You lived it. Dale left with informational materials, promising again to consider the offer. Something about the idea of preventing other attacks appealed to him, finding meaning in his suffering. December brought Dale's second skin graft surgery. Mark returned as promised, staying through the procedure and initial recovery. The results were better than expected, with the surgeon pronouncing himself satisfied with the coverage of the wound. Still, the missing hair and visible scarring would always be evident. "Permanent reminder," Dale commented, looking in a mirror for the first time since the attack. A ridge of puckered scar tissue ran across his scalp, where the bear's teeth had torn away. Skin. The grafted areas were a slightly different texture and color than his natural scalp. No hair would ever grow there again. Combined with the deep scars on his shoulder and back, Dale's body told the story of his encounter more eloquently. How that words ever could. Christmas approached. Mark returned to Seattle after making Dale promise to join him there for the holiday. Dale agreed reluctantly, apprehensive about traveling and being away from the familiar comfort of his cabin. The visit to Seattle proved more challenging than Dale anticipated. Mark's apartment was on the 3rd floor with no elevator. City noises, traffic siren. The grafted scalp healed completely, though it remained sensitive to touch and temperature changes. Dale ventured into his taxidermy workshop for the first time since the attack. The unfinished projects waited. A mule deer half-mounted, a seed duck, collection of duck and pheasant skins prepared, but not yet worked. His tools lay exactly where he'd left them months ago. With halting movements, Dale picked up a small scalpel. His hand trembled slightly, but less than he'd feared. Perhaps this part of his life at least could resume. Not hunting, not yet, maybe never, but the careful art of preservation and display. There was a meditative quality to taxidermy. That had always centered him. As winter eased towards spring, Dale made his decision about the fish and game request. He contacted Officer Jenkins and agreed to participate in their education program, with conditions. No media presence, no sensationalizing. Focus on safety and proper behavior in bear country. His first presentation was scheduled for April at a regional sportsman's show in Lewiston. Dale prepared carefully, organizing his thoughts about the encounter, what he'd done right and wrong, what might have prevented it. He decided to be unflinchingly honest about his mistakes, his terror, the reality of recovery. The day of the presentation, Dale stood nervously backstage as Jenkins introduced him to a room of about 50 hunters and outdoor enthusiasts. His cap covered the worst of his scarring, but he planned to show the audience his injuries as part of the education. "Many of you have heard about Dale Murphy," Jenkins was saying. "Today he's here to share his first months of surgeries and physical therapy, the nightmares that still plagued him, the everyday tasks that remained challenging. The grizzly wasn't evil or malicious," he concluded. "It was being exactly what nature made it to be. A powerful predator defending a food source. I was the one out of place, unprepared for the reality of sharing space with such a creature. Bear spray might have prevented the attack. Better, awareness certainly would have given me more time to react. These are lessons I paid for in blood and pain. You don't have to." The questions afterward were respectful, focused on practical matters of bear safety and behavior. No one asked for gruesome details or treated Dale like a sideshow attraction. Something about his straightforward presentation had set the tone. As people filed out, a young man approached Dale. He was maybe 20, dressed in typical hunting attire, clearly nervous. "Mr. Murphy, just wanted to say thanks. I'm heading into grizzly country for the first time this season. What you shared, it helps to know what's really at stake." Dale nodded, unexpectedly moved. "Be careful out there. Bears aren't the enemy, but they deserve serious respect." That night, driving home, Dale felt something he hadn't experienced since before the attack, a sense of purpose. His suffering could have meaning if it helped others avoid similar fates. It wasn't redemption exactly, but it was something. Spring advanced across the Idaho landscape. Dale's presentations with fish and game continued, expanding to include school groups and community organizations. He developed a particular focus on younger hunters, emphasizing respect for wildlife and proper safety protocols. His physical condition plateaued. The shoulder would never regain full mobility. The bear's teeth had severed too many tendons and damaged the joint itself. The scalp grafts remained tight and sensitive, requiring constant protection from sun exposure. The psychological scars ran deeper, startle responses to sudden noises, anxiety in dense forest, nightmares that came less frequently but never fully disappeared. Dale sold most of his hunting equipment, but kept his guns, including the Remington that had failed to protect him from the grizzly. The taxidermy business provided enough income for his modest needs, and he found renewed satisfaction in the careful work, preserving animals brought to him by other hunters. Early summer brought an unexpected letter from a wildlife biologist studying grizzly populations in the Selway Bitterroot Wilderness. The researcher had heard of Dale's encounter and was documenting bear-human interactions throughout the region. Genetic testing of hair samples collected at various sites suggests your bear, an older male approximately 20-25 years old, has denned in the same general area for at least a decade, the letter explained. He's fathered numerous cubs and represents a successful conservation effort. Your encounter, while unfortunate, demonstrates the challenges of humans and large predators sharing a shrinking wilderness. Dale read the letter several times. There was something oddly comforting in knowing the bear continued its bare existence, unaware of how profoundly it had altered Dale's life. 20 years old, an elder statesman in the grizzly world, Dale respected that. In July, to his own surprise, Dale returned to the mountains, not to hunt, but simply to hike, to test his relationship with the wilderness that had been central to his identity for so long. He chose a popular trail, carried bear spray prominently on his belt, and made noise as he walked. His repaired body moved differently now, with new limitations and persistent aches, but it moved. The familiar smells of pine and summer wildflowers filled his lungs. Birds called from the canopy. A spring bubbled beside the trail. Beauty remained, undiminished by his trauma. Dale didn't venture near the meadow where the attack had occurred. That spot belonged to a different lifetime. Instead, he found a sunny outcropping with a view of the mountains and sat, listening to the wilderness breathe around him. A movement in the valley below caught his eye. A deer and fawn picking their way through a clearing. Further away, barely visible, a black bear turned over rocks at a stream's edge, searching for insects. The natural world continuing its ancient patterns. Dale touched the scars on his scalp, tangible reminders of his place in that world, neither master nor outcast, but participant on nature's terms. The fear remained, a healthy respect for forces beyond his control, but alongside it grew something else, acceptance of his changed body, his altered perspective, his continuing story. The bear that had nearly killed him was out there somewhere, perhaps even now patrolling its territory, hunting, feeding, preparing for another winter. Dale would never see it again. But its mark on him was indelible, not just in the scars he carried, but in the wisdom those scars had forced upon him. As the sun began its descent toward the western peaks, Dale gathered his pack and started back down the trail. Tomorrow, he had another presentation scheduled, new hunters eager to learn from his experience. The bear's legacy continuing through him. A jay called harshly from a nearby pine. Wind rustled through aspens. Dale Murphy walked carefully down the mountain, watchful but unafraid, carrying his scars like a map of territory traversed and survived. Now let's move on to the story of the next survivor. The late afternoon sun cast long shadows through the pines as 15-year-old Cody Reed adjusted his backpack straps for the third time in the last hour. His shoulders ached from the weight he'd been carrying since the Boy Scout troop had set out from the trailhead at dawn. Troop 192 from Modesto, California, had been planning this 3-day backpacking trip in the Sierra Nevada for months, and despite his growing discomfort, Cody felt a small thrill of excitement as he spotted the clearing ahead where they would make camp for the night. "Keep it moving, guys," called Mr. Peterson, the scoutmaster, from the front of the line. "We want to get camp set up before we lose the light." Cody's best friend, Tyler Martinez, trudged alongside him, his normally energetic demeanor subdued by the day's hike. "Dude, I thought you said this trail was moderate," Tyler groaned, shifting his own pack. "That's what the guide said," Cody replied, wiping sweat from his forehead with the back of his hand. "Maybe they meant moderate for like mountain goats." These boys had been hiking for nearly 8 hours along the Bear Creek Trail in the Emigrant Wilderness area, a remote section of the Stanislaus National Forest. The Sierra Nevada mountains stretched in every direction, their rugged peaks still capped with patches of snow, despite it being early June. The air was thin and cool at this elevation, around 7,000 feet, and Cody's legs burned with each uphill section. As they neared the clearing, Mr. Peterson raised his hand, signaling the group to gather around. The 12 boys of Troop 192, ranging in age from 13 to 17, formed a rough semicircle around their leader. Mr. Peterson, a stocky man in his early 40s with salt and pepper hair and weathered skin that spoke of countless outdoor adventures, pointed to the clearing. "This is our home for tonight, gentlemen," he announced. "Bear Creek is just beyond those trees, about 50 yards away. Remember what we discussed about camp setup? What's the first order of business?" "Bear safety," several boys called out in unison. "That's right," Mr. Peterson nodded approvingly. "This is black bear country, and while they generally avoid humans, we need to be smart. All food and scented items go into the bear canisters tonight, not in your tents. No exceptions." Cody shifted uncomfortably. In his backpack's side pocket, hidden beneath his rain jacket, was a stash of candy bars he'd smuggled along for the trip, 3 Snickers, 2 Milky Ways, and a package of Reese's Cups. His mom had packed him plenty of trail mix and energy bars, but Cody had his own ideas about proper hiking fuel. He hadn't mentioned his contraband to anyone, not even Tyler. As the troop began to set up camp, Cody and Tyler were assigned to one of the 4-person tents. They were joined by 2 other scouts, Jake Wilson, a lanky 16-year-old with a perpetually serious expression who served as the troop's senior patrol leader, and Devin Cooper, a quiet 13-year-old on his first overnight wilderness trip. "I call this corner," Tyler said, tossing his sleeping bag onto the tent floor. "Whatever. Just don't snore like last time," Cody replied, claiming the space across from his friend. Jake rolled his eyes as he carefully arranged his gear by the entrance. "Remember, guys, absolutely no food in the tent. Bears can smell food from over a mile away." We know," Cody muttered, avoiding Jake's stern gaze. Jake had been drilling bear safety into everyone for weeks leading up to the trip. The Sierra Nevada was home to an estimated 10,000 to 15,000 black bears, and while attacks were rare, encounters were becoming more common as bears lost their fear of humans. After setting up their tents, the scouts gathered firewood and prepared dinner on their portable camp stoves. Mr. Peterson and the other adult leader, Mr. Grayson, supervised as the boys boiled water for their freeze-dried meals. The evening air grew chilly as the sun dipped behind the mountains, and Cody pulled on his fleece jacket. "After dinner, we'll store all food items and anything with a scent. That includes toothpaste, deodorant, and chapstick in the bear canisters," Mr. Peterson reminded them. "We'll place them at least 100 yards from camp. Tomorrow we'll cover bear encounter protocols during our morning hike." Dinner was a simple affair of rehydrated pasta and beef stew, but after the long day of hiking, it tasted like gourmet cuisine to Cody. As the boys ate around the small campfire, they shared stories and jokes, their laughter carrying through the quiet forest. Cody found himself glancing occasionally toward the darkening woods, imagining eyes watching them from the shadows. After dinner, the scouts dutifully packed away their food supplies and toiletries into the hard-sided bear canisters. Mr. Peterson and Jake led a small group to position the canisters far from the campsite, while Cody volunteered for dishwashing duty, hauling the dirty pots down to the creek. As he knelt by the water, scrubbing the remnants of dinner from the cooking pots, Cody heard a rustling in the undergrowth across the creek. He froze, his heart suddenly pounding. The forest had grown dark, and he could barely see the opposite bank. After a moment of silence, a deer emerged from the bushes, regarded him briefly with large, liquid eyes, then bounded away. Cody exhaled, realizing he'd been holding his breath. "Getting jumpy already?" Tyler appeared beside him, carrying another pot. "Just a deer," Cody said, trying to sound casual. "But man, it's dark out here. No streetlights, no houses, just us and whatever's out there." Tyler nodded, dipping his pot into the cold creek water. Jake said there were mountain lions out here too, not just bears. "Dude, shut up." Cody splashed water at his friend. "I'm freaked out enough already." They finished washing the dishes and returned to camp, where Mr. Peterson had started a proper campfire. The scouts gathered around, sharing stories as the flames cast flickering shadows on their faces. Mr. Grayson, a former park ranger with a deep knowledge of the area, pointed out constellations as they appeared in the darkening sky. "You see that bright star right there?" Mr. Grayson pointed upward. "That's Polaris, the North Star. If you ever get lost in the wilderness, that star can help guide you north." The boys gazed upward, momentarily awed by the brilliance of the night sky, free from city light pollution. Cody had never seen so many stars in his life. As the evening wore on, Mr. Peterson announced it was time to turn in. "We've got an early start tomorrow heading up to Eagle Lake. It's about a 6-mile hike with some challenging terrain, so get some rest." The scouts retreated to their tents, and Cody found himself alone for a moment as the others visited the makeshift latrine before bed. Quickly, he unzipped his backpack and pulled out one of his Snickers bars. He unwrapped it quietly, taking a large bite and savoring the sweet, nutty flavor. He was halfway through the candy bar when he heard footsteps approaching. Hastily, he shoved the remaining half back into his pack along with the wrapper, zipping it up just as Tyler ducked into the tent. "Dude, you would not believe the size of the spider I just saw," Tyler said, eyes wide. "Better than bears," Cody replied, hoping Tyler wouldn't notice the chocolate at the corner of his mouth. Jake and Devin joined them moments later, and the 4 boys settled into their sleeping bags. Despite his exhaustion from the day's hike, Cody found sleep elusive. The ground was hard beneath his sleeping pad, and unfamiliar forest sounds kept startling him awake. The hoot of an owl, the distant howl of a coyote, the creaking of branches in the light breeze. When he finally drifted off, his dreams were uneasy, filled with shadowy creatures moving just beyond his vision. He woke sometime in the middle of the night, his bladder uncomfortably full. For several minutes, he debated whether to hold it until morning, reluctant to leave the relative safety of the tent. Finally, discomfort won out, and he carefully unzipped his sleeping bag. "Where you going?" Tyler mumbled, half asleep. "Bathroom," Cody whispered back. "Go back to sleep." The night air was shockingly cold as Cody slipped out of the tent. The campsite was silent except for the soft snoring coming from one of the other tents. Above him, the stars glittered like diamonds against the black velvet sky. Cody clicked on his headlamp, its beam cutting through the darkness as he made his way toward the designated latrine area beyond a stand of pines. After relieving himself, Cody turned to head back to the tent, but paused. His stomach growled, reminding him of the half-eaten Snickers bar in his backpack. No one would be awake to notice if he finished it now. Changing direction, he walked quietly back to his tent. Inside, Tyler, Jake, and Devin were all asleep. Cody carefully unzipped his pack, wincing at each tiny sound the zipper made. He extracted the candy bar and slipped back outside, moving, a short distance from the tent where he wouldn't disturb the others. Sitting on a fallen log, he unwrapped the remaining half of the Snickers and took a bite, savoring the momentary pleasure of forbidden sugar. A twig snapped somewhere in the darkness beyond the reach of his headlamp. Cody froze, candy bar halfway, to his mouth. He held his breath, listening intently. After a moment of silence, he told himself it was probably just a small nocturnal animal, a raccoon or squirrel. Still, he hurriedly finished the candy bar, crumpled the wrapper, and stuffed it into the pocket of his pajama pants, planning to dispose of it properly in the morning. As he stood to return to the tent, another sound came from the darkness, a low huffing breath that was unmistakably larger than any squirrel. Cody's blood turned to ice. He slowly turned his head, directing his headlamp toward the sound. 20 yards away, just at the edge of the light's reach, stood a black bear. It was smaller than Cody had imagined bears to be, perhaps only 4 feet tall at the shoulder, but its bulk was substantial. Its black fur absorbed the light, making it seem like a bear-shaped hole in the world. The bear's small eyes reflected his headlamp like tiny mirrors. It swayed slightly from side to side, its nose lifted, clearly catching Cody's scent, or perhaps the lingering aroma of chocolate and peanuts. Every safety briefing Cody had ever sat through flashed through his mind. Don't run. Make yourself look big. Back away slowly. Make noise if it approaches. His limbs felt frozen as the bear lowered its head and took a step toward him. "Hey, bear," Cody managed to stammer, his voice barely above a whisper. He raised his arms to appear larger, but the bear seemed unimpressed. It took another step forward, then another. Finding his voice, Cody called out louder, "Hey, go away!" The bear paused, tilting its head as if considering this request. For a moment, Cody thought it might actually retreat. Then its nose twitched, and it moved forward again with purpose. "Mr. Peterson," Cody shouted, backing away toward the tents. "Bear! There's a bear!" His shout broke the quiet night, and he heard, stirring from the tents. The bear, startled by the sudden noise, stopped its advance but didn't flee. Instead, it rose up on its hind legs, now appearing much larger than before, and let out a huff that sounded almost like annoyance. The tent flap behind Cody unzipped with a harsh sound, and Jake emerged, flashlight in hand. "What's going—" Jake's question died as his light fell on the bear, still standing on its hind legs about 15 yards away. "Holy shit," he breathed. Then, raising his voice, "Mr. Peterson, bear in camp." The campsite erupted into activity. Mr. Peterson emerged from his tent, quickly assessing the situation. "Everyone stay calm," he called out firmly. "Cody, Jake, back away slowly toward me." The bear dropped back to all fours, seemingly confused by the sudden commotion. Mr. Peterson grabbed a pot and a metal spoon from near the extinguished campfire. "Hey, bear," he shouted, banging the pot loudly. "Get out of here." The cacophony had the desired effect. The bear turned and lumbered away into the darkness, disappearing among the trees. But Cody knew it hadn't gone far. He could hear branches breaking as it moved through the underbrush. "Is everyone okay?" Mr. Peterson asked, scanning the group of scouts who had emerged from their tents, bleary-eyed and frightened. "Yeah," Cody stammered, his heart still racing. It didn't touch me. Mr. Peterson turned his attention to Cody. What were you doing outside alone, Cody? Cody's face burned with shame. I had to use the bathroom, he said, omitting the part about the candy bar. Mr. Grayson had joined them, carrying the bear spray that had been stored in his tent. Let's make sure the bear canisters are secure, he said to Mr. Peterson. It might have been attracted to the food scent. As the scout leaders conferred, Jake turned to Cody, his expression suspicious. What's that in your pocket? He asked, pointing his flashlight at the candy wrapper partially visible in Cody's pajama pocket. Cody's stomach dropped. Nothing, he said automatically, shoving the wrapper deeper into his pocket. But Jake wasn't fooled. Were you eating out? Here, is that what attracted the bear? The accusation hung in the air. Tyler and the other scouts looked at Cody, waiting for his response. Mr. Peterson approached, having overheard Jake's question. Cody? Mr. Peterson's voice was stern. Did you have food outside the bear canisters? Under the collective gaze of the troop, Cody's resolve crumbled. He pulled the crumpled Snickers wrapper from his pocket. It was just one candy bar, he said miserably. The disappointment on Mr. Peterson's face was worse than anger. One candy bar is all it takes, Cody. Bears have an incredible sense of smell. You put yourself and the entire troop at risk. I'm sorry, Cody mumbled, staring at the ground. We'll discuss this further in the morning, Mr. Peterson said. For now, everyone back to your tents. Cody, give me any other food you might have hidden away. Reluctantly, Cody retrieved the remaining candy bars from his backpack and handed them over. Mr. Peterson added them to one of the bear canisters, then assigned 2 older scouts to take turns keeping watch for the remainder of the night, though he assured the troop that the bear was unlikely to return after being scared off. Back in the tent, Jake's disapproval was palpable. You knew better, he said simply, before turning his back to Cody. Tyler, however, was more curious than angry. Was it scary? He whispered once Jake appeared to be asleep. The bear, I mean. Terrifying, Cody admitted. It was like it was looking right through me, like I was just a thing in its way. Do you think it'll come back? Cody didn't answer right away. I don't know, he finally said. I hope not. Sleep evaded Cody for the rest of the night. Every sound from the forest seemed amplified. Every rustle of leaves, every distant animal call. He kept imagining the bear returning, circling their campsite, drawn by the memory of human food. When the first gray light of dawn filtered through the tent fabric, Cody gave up on sleep entirely and sat up, rubbing his gritty eyes. The morning brought clear skies and crisp mountain air, but the mood in camp was subdued. As the scouts prepared breakfast, Mr. Peterson called Cody aside. I've been considering how to handle this situation, he said, his expression serious but not unkind. What you did was dangerous, Cody. You know our rules about food safety in bear country. I know, sir, Cody said, unable to meet the scoutmaster's eyes. I really am sorry. I believe you are, Mr. Peterson nodded, and I think you've learned your lesson. Rather than send you home, which would require one of us adults to escort you back and leave the troop short-handed, I'm going to ask you to give a presentation to the troop this evening about bear safety and the importance of proper food storage. Consider it a valuable learning opportunity, not just for you but for everyone. Cody nodded, relieved he wasn't being sent home in disgrace, but dreading the prospect of standing before the entire troop to essentially confess his foolishness. And Cody, Mr. Peterson added, I'll be watching you more closely for the remainder of this trip. Don't disappoint me again. Yes, sir, Cody replied. After breakfast, the troop broke camp and continued their journey. The plan for the day was to hike to Eagle Lake, where they would set up their second night's camp. The mood lightened somewhat as they hiked, the beauty of the Sierra Nevada working its magic on even the most tired scouts. The trail wound through stands of towering pines and across alpine meadows dotted with wildflowers. Water from the melting snowpack higher up created countless small streams that crisscrossed their path. Despite the splendor around him, Cody hiked with a heavy heart, replaying the previous night's encounter in his mind. Every dark shape among the trees made him start, his imagination transforming innocent logs and boulders into lurking bears. Tyler tried to maintain conversation, but Cody's responses were monosyllabic at best. During a water break around midday, Mr. Grayson gathered the troop for an impromptu lesson on black bears. What Cody experienced last night was a curious black bear, not an aggressive one, he explained. Black bears in California rarely attack humans unless they feel threatened or cornered. They're opportunistic feeders, and unfortunately, they're becoming increasingly habituated to human food in popular camping areas. "How big do they get?" asked Devin, his voice betraying his nervousness. "Adult males usually weigh between 150 and 400 pounds, Mr. Grayson replied. "Females are smaller, typically between 100 and 250 pounds. Based on Cody's description, I'd guess last night's visitor was a younger male, maybe 2 or 3 years old." "What should we do if we see another one?" Tyler asked. "First, stay calm," Mr. Grayson said. "Make noise to identify yourself as human. Bears don't want to encounter us any more than we want to encounter them. Never run. That can trigger a chase response. Back away slowly, keeping your eyes on the bear but avoiding direct eye contact, which they may perceive as a challenge." He went on to explain how to tell the difference between a defensive bear and one that might be predatory, though he emphasized that predatory attacks by black bears were extremely rare. Cody listened intently, absorbing information he wished he'd paid more attention to during previous safety briefings. They reached Eagle Lake by mid-afternoon. The lake was a stunning alpine jewel, its clear waters reflecting the surrounding peaks. The campsite was in a designated area about 100 yards from the shore, with a commanding view of the water. As the scouts set up camp, Cody noticed Mr. Peterson and Mr. Grayson having a serious conversation, occasionally glancing toward the surrounding forest. "What do you think they're talking about?" Cody asked Tyler as they hammered tent stakes into the rocky ground. Tyler shrugged. "Probably bear stuff, thanks to you." "You think that bear followed us?" Cody couldn't keep the worry from his voice. "Nah man, bears have territories, right? We're miles from where we were last night." Despite Tyler's reassurance, Cody couldn't shake his unease. The forest around Eagle Lake seemed denser, darker somehow, with more places for something large to hide. After the tents were pitched, Mr. Peterson announced they would have a few hours of free time before dinner. Most of the scouts headed to the lake, eager to cool off after the day's hike. Cody, however, remained in camp, using the time to prepare his presentation on bear safety using a small notebook he'd brought along. He was so engrossed in his notes that he didn't notice Jake approach until the older boy's shadow fell across the page. "Working on your bear safety presentation?" Jake asked, his tone neutral. Cody nodded, bracing for another lecture. Instead, Jake sat down beside him. "You know, my first year in Scouts, I snuck a bag of beef jerky into my sleeping bag. Thought I was being so clever." Cody looked up in surprise. "Did you get caught?" "Worse," Jake grimaced. "Woke up to a raccoon in my tent, trying to steal it. Little guy had chewed right through the tent fabric. I screamed so loud I woke up the entire campground." Despite himself, Cody laughed. "What happened?" "I had to use my own money to repair the tent, and I spent the rest of the trip being called Raccoon Boy." Jake smiled ruefully. "My point is, we all make mistakes. The important thing is learning from them." "Thanks," Cody said, genuinely touched by the unexpected show of solidarity. "I really didn't think it would be a big deal. Most wilderness accidents start with someone thinking something isn't a big deal," Jake replied, his expression growing serious again. "That's why we have protocols. They're written in blood, as my dad says." The conversation left Cody feeling marginally better, though his anxiety returned as evening approached. The scouts prepared dinner over camp stoves, and Mr. Peterson went through an exaggerated demonstration of proper food storage, clearing away even the water they'd used to wash dishes. This time, Cody made sure every wrapper and morsel was properly stored in the bear canisters. After dinner, as the troop gathered around the campfire, Mr. Peterson called Cody forward for his presentation. With nervous hands and a quavering voice, Cody began to share what he'd learned about bear safety, occasionally referring to his notes. "Black bears have an incredible sense of smell," he explained. "They can detect food odors from over a mile away. That's why proper food storage is so important." He went on to describe the dangers of habituating bears to human food, explaining how bears that associate humans with food often have to be relocated or even euthanized. As he spoke, Cody grew more confident, especially when he saw the genuine interest on the faces of the younger scouts. He ended with a personal apology. "What I did last night put everyone at risk, and I'm sorry. I thought one candy bar wouldn't matter, but it could have led to something a lot worse than just a scary encounter." Mr. Peterson thanked him, adding, "This is an important lesson for all of us. In the wilderness, seemingly small decisions can have major consequences." The evening continued with songs and stories around the campfire, and Cody began to feel the tension of the past 24 hours ease somewhat. As darkness fell, the stars emerged once again, countless pinpoints of light against the vast blackness. The remoteness that had frightened Cody the previous night now felt almost comforting, a reminder of how small human concerns were in the grand scheme of things. When it was time for bed, Cody felt exhausted from the day's hike and the emotional toll of his bear encounter and subsequent confession. He fell asleep almost as soon as his head hit his rolled-up jacket that served as a pillow. Sometime deep in the night, Cody was jolted awake by a sound outside the tent, a heavy footfall followed by snuffling. His entire body tensed as he lay perfectly still, straining his ears. The snuffling grew louder, now just outside the tent wall nearest Cody's head. Parallel to his face, separated only by the thin nylon fabric, he could make out the outline of a large snout pressing against the tent. "Jake," Cody whispered, his mouth dry with fear. "Wake up." Jake stirred but didn't fully wake. The shape outside the tent moved, circling toward the entrance. Cody could hear the creature's breathing, heavy and rhythmic. With trembling fingers, he reached for his headlamp, then hesitated. Would the sudden light startle the animal into attacking? The zipper of the tent entrance began to move. Cody's breath caught in his throat. The zipper was rising slowly, inch by inch, as if being manipulated by deliberate paws. Impossible, he thought. Bears can't unzip tents. "Hey!" Cody finally shouted, his voice breaking the silence like a gunshot. Tyler and Jake bolted upright, and from outside came a startled, "Whoa!" The tent flap opened to reveal not a bear, but Devin, the youngest scout, his eyes wide with surprise. "What are you doing?" Jake demanded, his voice thick with interrupted sleep. "I had to pee," Devin explained. "Didn't want to wake you guys up." Relief washed over Cody, leaving him lightheaded. "I thought you were the bear coming back," he admitted. Devin looked concerned. "Do you think it followed us?" "No," Jake said firmly, shooting Cody a warning look. "We're miles away, and we stored all food properly. The bear from last night is long gone." Devin nodded, though he didn't look entirely convinced. "I still need to pee," he reminded them. "I'll go with you," Jake sighed, reaching for his flashlight. "Buddy system, remember." After Jake and Devin left, Tyler turned to Cody. "You're really freaked out, huh?" "Wouldn't you be?" Cody replied defensively. "You didn't see it up close." "I guess not," Tyler conceded. "But Jake's right. That bear is probably miles away by now doing bear things." Cody wanted to believe him, but the memory of those small reflective eyes was too vivid. He lay back down but didn't immediately close his eyes, staring instead at the tent ceiling and listening to the night sounds outside. When Jake and Devin returned, the tent fell quiet again, but Cody remained awake, drifting in and out of uneasy, half asleep until the first birds began their morning songs. The second full day of their trip dawned clear and warm. After breakfast, Mr. Peterson announced the day's plan. A day hike to a nearby ridge with spectacular views of the surrounding mountains, returning to the same campsite at Eagle Lake for their final night before hiking out the following morning. The troop set out after securing the campsite, following a trail that climbed steadily through the forest. As they gained elevation, the trees thinned, providing increasingly expansive views of the wilderness below. Cody hiked near the middle of the group, finding his rhythm despite his fatigue. The physical exertion and the beauty around him gradually pushed his fears to the background. At the ridge summit, the scouts stopped for lunch, gazing out over a panorama that stretched for miles in every direction. Endless mountains and valleys, patches of snow gleaming on the highest peaks, the silver thread of a river winding through the distant landscape. Mr. Peterson pointed out landmarks, including the volcanic dome of Pinecrest Peak to the west. "This is what it's all about," Tyler said, sitting beside Cody as they munched on trail mix and beef jerky. "Worth a little bear scare, right?" Cody had to admit the view was magnificent. "Yeah, I guess so. Just wish I could stop thinking about it." "You will," Tyler assured him. "By next week, it'll just be a cool story to tell everyone back home." After lunch, they began their descent back toward Eagle Lake. The trail down was steeper in places, requiring careful footing on loose rocks and exposed roots. About halfway down, Mr. Peterson called for a water break in a small clearing beside the trail. The scouts settled on rocks and fallen logs, passing around water bottles and snack bars. Cody sat apart from the others, still feeling somewhat like an outcast despite the troop's apparent forgiveness of his mistake. Lost in thought, he didn't immediately notice the sudden silence that fell over the group. Then he heard it, a cracking sound from the underbrush at the edge of the clearing, followed by a low, huffing breath that sent ice through his veins. He turned slowly to see the black bear emerge from the trees, larger than the one from the previous night. This bear moved with purpose, its eyes scanning the group of suddenly motionless scouts. "Nobody move," Mr. Peterson said quietly but firmly. "Stay together." The bear paused, seeming to consider the cluster of humans. Then, to Cody's horror, it began moving directly toward him, separating him from the main group. "Stay calm, Cody," Mr. Grayson called, his voice steady despite the tension. "Stand up slowly and back toward us." Cody tried to stand, but his legs felt frozen. The bear continued its approach, now just 10 yards away. Its size was intimidating, easily 300 pounds, with powerful shoulders and paws that could deliver devastating blows. Finding his courage, Cody pushed himself to his feet, keeping his movements slow and deliberate. The bear stopped, watching him intently. "Now back this way," Mr. Peterson instructed. "Don't turn your back on it." Cody took one step backward, then another. The bear remained still, its dark eyes fixed on him. For a moment, Cody thought he might reach the safety of the group unscathed. Then Tyler, attempting to help, took a step forward and shouted, "Go away, bear!" The bear's demeanor changed instantly. It huffed loudly and charged forward, covering the distance to Cody in seconds. Mr. Grayson rushed forward with the bear spray, but before he could use it, the bear had reached Cody. In a blur of black, fur and flashing claws, it swept a massive paw at the boy. Cody felt a searing pain across his back as the bear's claws tore through his thin hiking shirt and into the flesh beneath. The force of the blow knocked him forward onto his hands and knees. He heard screaming. His own voice mingled with the shouts of the others. The bear loomed over him, its hot breath on his neck. Then came the hissing sound of the bear spray being discharged. The bear reared back, pawing at its face, and snorting in distress. Mr. Peterson and several of the older scouts had formed a tight group, making themselves appear larger while shouting and clapping their hands. Dazed with pain and fear, Cody felt someone dragging him away from the bear by his shoulders. "I've got you," Jake's voice came from behind him. "Just keep moving." The bear, temporarily blinded by the capsaicin spray, backed away, huffing and shaking its head. After a moment of apparent confusion, it turned and lumbered back into the forest, disappearing among the trees. "Is everyone okay?" Mr. Peterson called out, his voice tight with controlled panic. "Cody's hurt," Jake responded, still supporting the younger boy. Mr. Grayson rushed to them, his face pale beneath his tan. "Let me see," he said, gently turning Cody to examine. Ran diagonally across his upper back, each about 6 inches long and deep enough to draw blood, but not reaching muscle or bone. "This is going to sting," Mr. Grayson warned, before cleaning the wounds with antiseptic wipes from the first aid kit. Cody gritted his teeth against the burning pain, tears welling in his eyes despite his effort to remain stoic. "You're doing great, Cody," Mr. Peterson assured him, gripping his shoulder supportively. "These need proper medical attention, but we can manage until we get you to a hospital." "Are we hiking out now?" Tyler asked, hovering anxiously nearby. Mr. Peterson nodded. "Change of plans. We'll head back to camp, gather our gear, and hike. To the trailhead today. It'll be a long hike, but Cody needs medical attention sooner rather than later." After applying antibiotic ointment and covering the wounds with sterile gauze, they fashioned a makeshift bandage using an ace bandage and athletic tape. Mr. Grayson gave Cody ibuprofen for the pain, then helped him put on one of Jake's spare shirts, which hung loosely on his smaller frame. "Can you walk?" Mr. Peterson asked. Cody nodded, though he wasn't entirely sure. The pain was intense but somehow distant, as if happening to someone else. Shock, he realized dimly, remembering first aid lessons about how the body responds to trauma. The troop moved quickly back to the Eagle Lake campsite, maintaining a tight formation with Mr. Peterson at the front and Mr. Grayson bringing up the rear, bear spray at the ready. They encountered no further sign of the bear, but every rustle in the undergrowth sent a jolt of fear through the group. Back at camp, they rapidly broke down the tents and packed up their gear. Cody's pack was distributed among the other scouts to lighten his load for the hike out. By mid-afternoon, they were on the trail again, moving at a brisk pace despite their fatigue. Cody walked between Mr. Peterson and Jake, his back throbbing with each step, but his determination unwavering. He refused offers to stop and rest, driven by a desperate need to put as much distance as possible between himself and the bear. The hike that had taken them a full day coming in was compressed into a grueling 6-hour march out. As daylight began to fade, they reached the Forest Service road where their vehicles were parked at the trailhead. The sight of the familiar vans brought a collective sigh of relief from the exhausted scouts. "Tyler, Jake, help Cody into the lead van," Mr. Peterson directed. "Mr. Grayson will drive him and a few others to the nearest hospital in Sonora. The rest of us will follow." The drive to Sonora Hospital took over an hour along winding mountain roads. Cody sat sideways in the passenger seat to avoid pressure on his wounded back, while Mr. Grayson drove with grim determination. Tyler sat directly behind Cody, uncharacteristically quiet, occasionally asking if he was doing okay. "It really hurts," Cody admitted during one such inquiry, "but I'm more scared about what my mom's going to say." "Dude, she's going to be too relieved you're alive to be mad," Tyler assured him. By the time they reached the emergency room entrance at Sonora Hospital, the ibuprofen had worn off, and Cody's back felt like it was on fire. The fluorescent lights of the ER seemed harsh after days in the natural light of the wilderness. A nurse quickly assessed his condition and ushered him into an examination room, while Mr. Grayson provided the necessary information at the registration desk. "Bear attack, you say?" The ER doctor, a woman in her 50s with kind eyes and efficient movements, examined Cody's wounds after a nurse had helped him onto the examination table. "We don't see many of those even here in bear country." "It just came at me," Cody said, wincing as she probed gently around the wounds. "You're lucky," she told him. "These are relatively shallow. No major muscle damage and they missed your spine. You'll have some impressive scars, but with proper care you should heal well." The wounds were thoroughly cleaned and irrigated, a painful process that left Cody gripping the edges of the examination table until his knuckles turned white. After testing his reflexes and motor functions to ensure there was no nerve damage, the doctor administered a local anesthetic and began to suture the deepest parts of the lacerations. "We need to contact your parents," the doctor mentioned, as she worked. "Mr. Grayson, one of our scout leaders, is calling them," Cody replied, feeling the strange tugging sensation of the stitches going in. Though the anesthetic had mercifully numbed the pain, after 23 stitches across the 3 claw marks, the wounds were dressed with fresh bandages. The doctor prescribed antibiotics to prevent infection and pain medication for the next few days. She also administered a tetanus booster shot, explaining that wild animal scratches carried a high risk of infection. "You'll need to see your regular doctor in a few days to check how these are healing," she advised. "Keep the wounds clean and dry. No swimming or soaking until they're fully healed, which will take at least 2 weeks for the surface and several months for complete healing beneath the skin." By the time Cody was wheeled out to the waiting room, hospital policy though he insisted he could walk, the rest of the troop had arrived. His mother was there as well, her face tight with worry as she rushed forward to embrace him, careful to avoid his injured back. "Oh, Cody," she said, her voice wavering between relief and distress. "When Mr. Peterson called, I thought I didn't know how bad it was." "I'm okay, Mom," Cody assured her, suddenly feeling very young and very tired. "Just some scratches." Mr. Peterson approached, his expression somber. "Mrs. Reed, I can't express how sorry I am this happened. We take every precaution with bear safety, but—" "It wasn't your fault," Cody interrupted. "It was mine. I had food in my tent the first night. That's probably why the bear came back." His mother looked confused. "What do you mean, came back?" Mr. Peterson explained the initial encounter and how they had changed their plans to hike out early after the attack. As he spoke, Cody saw his mother's expression shift from concern to something approaching anger. "You mean he encountered a bear and you continued the trip?" she asked incredulously. "The first encounter was just a curious bear, Mrs. Reed," Mr. Grayson interjected. "It was frightened away easily, and we believed we had moved well outside its territory. The second bear was likely a completely different animal." "Likely?" His mother's voice rose. "You're telling me my son was attacked by a bear, and you're not even sure if it was the same one that was in your campsite the night before?" The other scouts watched uncomfortably as Cody's mother continued to express her dismay. Finally, Mr. Peterson suggested they continue the conversation privately. "The bear away and got me help." His mother took a deep breath, visibly trying to calm herself. "I know, and I'm grateful for that. But Cody, You could have been killed, but I wasn't, Cody pointed out. And I learned a lot about bear safety. Despite the tension, Mr. Peterson's mouth quirked in a small smile. He certainly did. In fact, Cody gave an excellent presentation to the troop last night about proper food storage in Eao, bear country. After a few more minutes of discussion, during which Mr. Peterson assured Mrs. Reed that the incident would be fully documented and reported to both the Boy Scouts of America and the California Department of Fish and Wildlife, arrangements were made for Cody to return home with his mother. The rest of the troop would continue on to Modesto in the scout vans. As they prepared to leave, Jake approached Cody, offering his hand in the scout handshake. You handled yourself well out there, he said, genuine respect in his voice. Not many people can say they survived a bear attack. Thanks for pulling me away, Cody replied, wincing slightly as the handshake jostled his injuries. Tyler was next, giving Cody a gentle fist bump instead of his usual exuberant slap on the back. Dude, you're going to be a legend at school. Bear Attack Reed. Despite everything, Cody laughed. Maybe I'll start a new badge trend. Indeed, Mr. Peterson approached with something in his hand, a Bear Aware Merit Badge, normally awarded to scouts who completed educational requirements about bear behavior and safety. You've earned this, he said, pressing it into Cody's palm. Not in the traditional way, perhaps, but I'd say you're more bear-aware than most now. The drive home to Modesto was quiet, Cody dozing intermittently in the passenger seat as the pain medication took effect. His mother kept glancing over at him, as if reassuring herself he was still there. Are you going to make me quit Scouts? Cody asked finally, the question that had been weighing on his mind since the hospital. His mother sighed. I don't know, Cody, this was pretty serious. It was my fault, he reminded her. Not the Scouts. I broke the rules. That's what concerns me, she replied. If you'd followed the rules in the first place. I know, Cody said quietly. I messed up, but I learned from it. His mother reached over to squeeze his hand. Let's talk about it after you've had some time to recover, okay? No decisions tonight. When they arrived home, Cody's father was waiting, having returned early from a business trip after receiving news of the accident. His face paled visibly when Cody turned to show him the bandages covering his back. Jesus, Cody, he breathed. When your mother called, I thought maybe it was just a scratch or two. The doctor said I was lucky, Cody told him, suddenly exhausted beyond measure. Can I go to bed now? I'm really tired. His parents exchanged concerned glances but nodded. We'll talk more tomorrow, his father said. Let's get you settled. Getting into bed proved challenging with his injuries, but once horizontal on his stomach, Cody felt a profound relief. His own bed, after days of sleeping on the ground, felt impossibly soft and safe. Despite the lingering pain in his back and the tumultuous events of the day, he fell into a deep sleep almost immediately. The next morning, Cody woke to sunlight, streaming through his bedroom window, and the distant sounds of his parents talking in the kitchen. For a moment, the events of the previous days seemed like a particularly vivid dream. Then he shifted position, and the pain across his back provided sharp confirmation of reality. Carefully, he made his way to the bathroom to examine his bandaged wounds in the mirror. The white gauze stretched from his right shoulder blade to just above his left kidney. Beneath the bandages, he knew, were 3 parallel claw marks that would eventually become scars, permanent reminders of his encounter with the black bear. After a shower, awkwardly taken with plastic wrap covering his bandages as the doctor had instructed, Cody joined his parents in the kitchen. His mother immediately rose to help him, but he waved her away, determined to manage on his own. How are you feeling this morning? His father asked, setting a plate of scrambled eggs in front of him. Sore, Cody admitted, but better than yesterday. The school called, his mother said, sitting across from him. Mr. Peterson contacted them about the incident. They've excused your absences, of course, and wanted to know if you'd be back on Monday. Cody considered this. It was Saturday now, giving him the weekend to recover. Yeah, I think so. The doctor said I just need to keep the wounds clean and take the antibiotics. They also mentioned something about a newspaper wanting to talk to you, his father added, his tone neutral but his expression concerned. Apparently, bear attacks are newsworthy around here. Cody felt a flutter of anxiety. I don't want to talk to a newspaper. That's what I told them, his mother assured him. You don't need that kind of attention right now. After breakfast, Cody retreated to his room, where he spent most of the day playing video games, a welcome distraction from the pain and the memories that kept flashing through his mind. the bear's eyes reflecting his headlamp, the sound of its breathing, the terrible moment when it charged toward him, the searing pain of claws ripping through skin. Tyler called in the afternoon, eager to check on him and share how the story had already spread through their school. "Everyone's talking about it," Tyler reported excitedly. "You're like famous now. Some seniors even asked me if I was there when it happened." "Great," Cody replied without enthusiasm. "Just what I wanted. Are you coming back?" "To Scouts?" Tyler asked, his voice growing serious. "The next meeting is Tuesday." Cody hesitated. "I don't know. My parents haven't decided yet." "Dude, you have to come back. You've got the Bear Aware badge now." "Maybe," Cody said non-committally. "I'll let you know." On Sunday, Mr. Peterson came by the house to check on Cody and bring a card signed by all the members of Troop 192. He also brought paperwork, an incident report form for the Boy Scouts of America, and contact information for the California Department of Fish and Wildlife. "They'll want a statement from Cody about the attack," Mr. Peterson explained to Cody's parents in the living room. "It helps them track bear behavior and determine if there's a problem bear in the area that needs to be relocated." "Will they try to find the bear that attacked Cody?" his father asked. Mr. Peterson shook his head. "Probably not. Black bears typically avoid humans, and attacks are so rare that they generally consider it an isolated incident unless there's a pattern of aggressive behavior in a specific area." "So it could attack someone else," Cody's mother said, her voice tight. "It's very unlikely," Mr. Peterson assured her. "Most bears want nothing to do with humans. This was an unusual situation." After Mr. Peterson left, Cody sat with his parents at the kitchen table, the incident report form between them. "Do you remember everything clearly?" his father asked as Cody began to fill out his account of the attack. "Too clearly," Cody replied, pen hovering over the paper. "I keep seeing it when I close my eyes." His mother placed a gentle hand on his arm. "That's normal after something traumatic. It may take some time to process." Cody nodded and began to write, detailing both encounters with the bears, the curious visitor to their first campsite and the aggressive attacker at the clearing. He described the bear's appearance, its behavior before and during the attack, and the actions taken by the scout leaders afterward. Writing it down felt oddly therapeutic, transforming the chaotic, frightening experience into an ordered sequence of events. On Monday, Cody returned to school, his back still painful but manageable with regular doses of ibuprofen. As Tyler had predicted, word of his encounter had spread, and he found himself the center of unwanted attention. Students he barely knew approached him in the hallways, asking to see his wounds or pressing for details about the attack. "Is it true you punched the bear in the nose?" a seventh grader asked during lunch. "No," Cody replied wearily. "I didn't fight it at all. Our scout leader used bear spray and it ran away." "But you have claw marks, right? Can we see them?" "They're bandaged," Cody said, increasingly uncomfortable with the questions, "and they need to stay that way." By the end of the day, Cody was exhausted from repeating his story and deflecting exaggerated versions that had somehow taken root. Even some teachers had pulled him aside to ask about the incident, though they were more concerned with his well-being than sensationalizing the attack. At home that evening, Cody found his father on the phone with a local newspaper reporter who had somehow obtained their number. "He's a minor, and he's still recovering," his father was saying firmly. "We're not interested in having this story published." After a pause, he added, "No, you may not speak with him. Please don't call again," before hanging up with more force than necessary. "Another reporter?" Cody asked, dropping his backpack by the door. His father nodded grimly. "Third one today. Apparently bear attacks sell papers." "Why can't they just leave me alone?" Cody asked, frustration evident in his voice. "It's not like I did anything special. I got attacked and Mr. Grayson saved me with bear spray." End of story. "People are fascinated by survival stories," his father explained, "especially ones involving wild animals. It reminds them there are still things in this world beyond human control." That night, Cody dreamed of the bear again. In the dream, there was no bear spray, no scout leaders to intervene. Just him and the massive animal, its claws ripping not just his back but deeper, tearing into vital organs as he screamed helplessly. He woke in a cold sweat, his heart racing, the pain in his back flaring from his sudden movement. On Tuesday, the decision about whether to continue with Boy Scouts loomed. The troop meeting was scheduled for that evening, and Cody still hadn't decided if he wanted to attend. His parents had told him it was his choice, though he suspected his mother hoped he would quit. During lunch, Tyler pressed him for an answer. "Are you coming tonight? Mr. Peterson said we're going to have a special presentation about wilderness safety." Cody pushed his food around his plate. "I don't know, everyone will just want to talk about the bear." "So what?" Tyler countered. "It happened. It's part of the Scout experience now. Your experience. Are you going to let one bad thing ruin everything else about Scouts?" Cody considered this. Despite the traumatic ending, there had been good moments during the trip. The camaraderie around, the campfire, the sense of accomplishment after a difficult hike, the breathtaking views from the ridge. And he had worked hard for his badges and rank advancements over the past 2 years. "I'll think about it," he promised Tyler. After school, Cody sat in his room, staring at his Scout uniform hanging in the closet. The sight of it brought conflicting emotions, pride in what he had accomplished, but also a new association with fear and pain. On his desk sat the Bear Aware badge Mr. Peterson had given him, its embroidered design featuring a black bear against a forest background. His father knocked on the doorframe. "Meeting's in an hour if you want to go. Mom says she'll drive you." Cody nodded, still undecided. "Dad, do you think I should quit Scouts?" His father entered the room and sat on the edge of the bed. "That's entirely up to you, Cody. What happened was scary, and no one would blame you if you wanted to step away. But running from fear rarely makes it go away." "I keep seeing it," Cody admitted. "The bear. When I'm trying to sleep, or sometimes just randomly during the day, like it's still after me. That's normal after trauma," his father said. "It might help to talk about it, not with reporters or curious classmates, but with people who were there, your fellow Scouts." Cody thought about Jake pulling him away from the bear, about Mr. Grayson rushing forward with the bear spray, about Tyler's unwavering friendship. "Maybe you're right," he said slowly. "Maybe I should go tonight." When Cody arrived at the Pui Scout meeting in the church basement, where Troop 192 gathered weekly, he was met with a round of applause. The other Scouts had formed an impromptu honor guard, creating a path for him to walk through. At the end stood Mr. Peterson and Mr. Grayson, both smiling broadly. "Welcome back, Cody," Mr. Peterson said, shaking his hand firmly. "We weren't sure we'd see you again." "I wasn't sure either," Cody admitted. The meeting began with the usual opening ceremonies, followed by patrol reports and announcements. Then Mr. Peterson called Cody to the front. "As many of you know, our troop experienced a rare and dangerous situation during our Sierra Nevada trip." Mr. Peterson addressed the assembled Scouts and the parents who had come to pick them up. Cody Reed was injured in a black bear attack, an extremely unusual occurrence in California. Tonight, with his permission, we'd like to use this as a learning opportunity for the entire troop. To Cody's surprise, a park ranger from the California Department of Fish and Wildlife was present. Ranger Garcia, a tall woman with short, gray hair and a no-nonsense demeanor, took the floor to discuss bear behavior, safety protocols, and the importance of proper food storage in bear country. "What happened to Cody is exceedingly rare," she emphasized. "Since 1986, there have been only about a dozen documented black bear attacks in California, despite an estimated population of 30,000 to 40,000 bears. Most black bears are naturally wary of humans and will avoid contact if possible." She went on to explain that the bear that attacked Cody was likely defending what it perceived as its territory or food source. The fact that there had been an earlier encounter at the campsite suggests this particular bear may have become habituated to human food, which is a dangerous situation for both bears and humans. After her presentation, Ranger Garcia asked Cody if he would share his experience with the group. Initially reluctant, Cody found that speaking about the attack to people who understood the context, fellow Scouts who knew the wilderness and its risks, was unexpectedly cathartic. "I made a mistake with the candy bars," he acknowledged, openly, "and that might have been what attracted the bear to our first campsite. I want everyone to understand how important those safety rules are. They're not just guidelines or suggestions. They can literally save lives." As he spoke, Cody felt a weight lifting. The attack was still a frightening memory, but sharing it transformed it somehow, from a nightmare that haunted him to a story of survival and learning. After the meeting, Ranger Garcia approached Cody privately. "Your report was very helpful," she told him. "Based on your description and the location, we believe this bear has been involved in other incidents of approaching campsites in that area. We're monitoring the situation, but without photos or DNA evidence, we can't positively identify it. So you won't try to catch it? Cody asked. Not based on a single incident, no, she explained, but we've posted warnings at trailheads in that area, and we're advising campers to be especially vigilant with food storage. Your experience might help prevent someone else from being injured. This knowledge provided some consolation to Cody, the idea that his ordeal might serve a purpose beyond his own hard-learned lesson. As the weeks passed, Cody's physical wounds began to heal. The stitches were removed after 10 days, leaving 3 pink lines across his back that the doctor assured him would fade somewhat with time, though they would likely remain visible as scars. More difficult to heal was the psychological impact of the attack. Cody found himself startling at sudden movements and growing tense when walking near wooded areas, even in the city park near his home, where no bears had been seen in decades. His participation in scout activities continued, though he was temporarily excused from physically demanding events while his back healed. The troop treated him with a mixture of concern and respect, and to his relief, the fascination with his bear encounter gradually waned as new adventures and challenges captured their attention. At school, too, the story eventually lost its novelty. By the end of the month, Cody was no longer Bear Attack Reed, but simply Cody again, much to his relief. The local newspaper had published a small article about the incident, despite his parents' objections, but without photos or an interview, it had been relegated to a back page and quickly forgotten. One unexpected outcome of the attack was Cody's growing interest in video games, particularly wilderness survival simulations. When not participating in scout activities or doing schoolwork, he spent hours immersed in virtual forests, where he could face digital bears and other predators from the safety of his bedroom. His parents, initially concerned about this new obsession, came to see it as a form of therapy, a way for Cody to process and gain control over his frightening experience. 6 weeks after the attack, Cody visited Yosemite National Park with his family, a trip that had been planned long before the incident. As they hiked along a popular trail, they encountered a sign warning of recent bear activity in the area. Cody felt his heart rate accelerate, and for a moment, he considered turning back. Instead, he took a deep breath and continued forward, staying close to his parents and keeping a watchful eye on the surrounding forest. They completed the hike without incident, and that evening, as they roasted marshmallows at their campsite, meticulously following all proper food storage protocols, Cody's father asked him how he felt being back in bear country. Scared, Cody admitted honestly, but also, okay, I guess. Like I know what to do now, and I know what can happen if I don't do it. His mother nodded in understanding. Fear can be healthy when it teaches us respect, especially respect for wild places and wild animals. The ranger at the visitor center said black bears almost never attack people, Cody's younger sister pointed out. She said you're way more likely to get hurt driving to the park than by a bear. She's right, Cody acknowledged. What happened to me was super rare. That's why it made the newspaper, even though it was just a small article. Will your scars ever go away? His sister asked, her young face solemn. Cody shook his head. Not completely, but that's okay. They remind me of something important. What's that? She pressed. Cody looked toward the darkening forest beyond their campsite, thinking of the bear that had attacked him and wondering where it was now, still roaming the Sierra Nevada perhaps, following its natural instincts in a world increasingly encroached upon by humans. They remind me that we're not in charge out here, he said finally. And that's kind of amazing when you think about it. There are still wild things in the world that don't care about our rules or our plans. They just are what they are. As darkness fell over Yosemite Valley, Cody gazed up at the stars emerging in the clear mountain sky, the same stars he had seen on that fateful camping trip. Somewhere in the vast wilderness around them, bears were going about their nightly routines, searching for food, raising cubs, preparing for the coming winter. And one particular bear, distinguished only by Cody's memory and the marks it had, left on his body, continued its solitary journey through the mountains, unaware of its brief but profound intersection with a human life, a wild creature, merely being what nature had made it to be. Cody touched the scars on his back, through his shirt, feeling the slightly raised lines that would forever connect him to that moment of terror and pain. But now there was something else there too, a respect for the wilderness and its inhabitants that went beyond fear, a humility in the face of natural forces far older and more powerful than human civilization. In the end, that was what remained. After all the newspaper articles had been forgotten, after the concerned, questions had ceased, after the nightmares had begun to fade, a 15-year-old boy with scars on his back and a story that would be part of him forever, a story of a black bear in the Sierra Nevada that had, for a few terrifying moments, reminded a human of his place in the natural world, and somewhere deep in the forest, that bear walked on, unaware of the mark it had left behind.